Hi, Jeff Burke from Broadband Forum, and we're here in Milan, Italy at our Q3 meeting. We've been going through with the individual work area directors, talking about what's been leading up to this particular meeting and what's coming up for the fall. And I know that one area that has had extraordinary workload and activity has been the area of Dave Sinicrope here, who is the director.
3.2 seconds to get this done. No, I'm sorry.
So Dave, you're the director of ATA, which is probably worth explaining to folks watching this, because ATA is a bit of an amalgamation of some historic individual project streams that we had on around here. So
Right, yeah. So ATA is Access and Transport Architecture, and it is what it says it is, right? It's basically the architecture and requirements that span the access network and the transport network underneath. It was derived from an amalgamation of what used to be architecture and migration and routing and transport. But really those two things are kind of synergistic, so it made sense to merge them together.
Right, and some of your projects speak directly to that, actually.
Yes, they do. And there's so many, I wrote them down. I can't remember them all. I want to make sure everybody gets their due.
Absolutely. Well, let's get started here. So I know that there's been a bit of a ramp up over the course of the summertime leading up to now, and then, of course, lots of activity here at the Q3 meeting. So maybe let's get a bit of a rundown as to what have been the highlighted projects. I know that I've bumped into or been into a couple meetings specifically concerning ALT and some of those areas.
I'll get to those for sure.
Why don't we just go? I'll let you.
Yeah. So starting at the top. So we've got a project on mobile transport and routing, and that deals with two areas right now. One is 5G transport. So simply put, it's the plumbing under the 5G mobile network. Basically, it's essentially. I mean, it's how to take the RAN and interconnect all the RAN equipment and the core, and how to interconnect the core equipment and then interconnect those together. So we're dealing with things like, right now it's focused mostly on the RAN side, so backhaul, front haul, and a lot of it's basically taking the new 3GPP 5G architecture, RAN architecture, and analyzing it and figuring out, what transport is necessary, what transport protocols, what transport network is necessary to make all that operate well. Mm-hmm. There's some new requirements that come out of 5G, and in particular performance, that we need to look after.
Right.
So that's we've got a good start on our architecture and requirements document right now, and we're looking at kind of highlighting some of that in a white paper that will come out within the next couple months.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, there's no hotter topic, obviously, in the industry right now than 5G, and you're going to be the foundation for that.
Well, yeah, it's like I keep telling people, it's not much to buy a house without plumbing, so we need to get the plumbing down.
Absolutely.
So the other thing going on there, and it's also a very hot topic, is dealing with network slicing. So you hear about 3GPP and NGMN, GSMA talking about network slicing, and this is basically allowing the separation of services in the mobile network, and actually, if we talk about fixed mobile convergence in the fixed network as well, but then being able to share infrastructure between services, right, simultaneously. Right. At some point, like we were just saying, that comes down to, okay, so the resources have been allocated to these services, but when you get to actually how the nodes are interconnected, how does that resource division translate down to what you need to do in the transport network? And so we've got a project right now on what we call mobile transport network management slicing. No, I didn't get that right. It's basically the management for the transport network slicing. Mm-hmm. And what it essentially is doing is it's taking the network slicing at the 3GPP and the mobile level and mapping it onto the transport network. Yep. So in the transport network, we have things like VPNs, we have things like LSPs, VLANs, and how are we going to leverage those to provide network slicing for the upper levels of the network? Yep. That's essentially what it is.
Well, and a big driver for the value that folks will get out of moving to 5G as
Right.
well as how efficient they'll be in doing it, right?
Right. And then across the 5G use cases, like where you have the enhanced mobile broadband case, that's the first one we're going after. But then there's the ultra reliable low latency case. That's like the golden egg, right? Is how to do remote surgery over your mobile phone. That one and more realistic things
Right, right.
like automotive interaction, things
Absolutely.
like that. So
Yeah, that was actually we had actually a fascinating special session on that over the course of the meeting here this time, which is
Yeah,
all about
right.
the how that will actually apply into autonomous driving. So
Exactly. Yeah,
Fascinating
the
stuff.
thing for that. Then we go into some work that we've been doing in the cloud interconnect area. We've come out with a TR in the past about how to use Ethernet services, how to implement Ethernet services using the EVPN technology out of the IETF. And we've got a nice brief paper on that now. So folks don't have to dive into the 40-page TR. They can kind of get a nice overview from the briefing paper.
Yeah.
And we're planning on having that ready for Broadband World Forum.
I'm sure that you may get an award for that from people, and they're thankful for not having to do that. Right?
Yes. we try not to cause people pain. Switching gears a little bit, so those two projects basically cover kind of like the mobile area and cloud area. When we start getting into more of the broadband type, the broadband access network, we've got a major effort on that's called disaggregated BNG. So the BNG is the broadband network gateway.
Yep.
It's basically the service master for the network. What the disaggregated BNG work is doing is what used to be one node is now being broken apart so that it can be distributed into multiple nodes.
Yep.
And in response to that, you're going to need a protocol between those broken up parts, and that's what we're developing is the architecture, the requirements, and then the protocol for that. We've actually done a fair amount since March of work on the architecture and the requirements. We did a lot of work over the summer on the requirements. We wrapped up that work. Basically, there's some polish that needs to be added, but we have the essential requirements in there now. And as a result, we were able to actually go through a protocol selection at this meeting, and we've chosen to go forward with the 3GPP PFCP protocol as the protocol that sits between the two entities of the disaggregated BNG.
Breaking news. All right.
Yeah. So that happened as of last night. So this is up to the minute news
great.
at this point. And then we'll be communicating that back to our partners, 3GPP and IETF, and letting them know our decision, and then where we take that going forward. We've also got, coming out of that work, was a discussion on carrier-grade NAT, carrier-grade network address translation, which the forum has touched on before with TR 242, but we're digging into the next step and also looking at how we would apply that to that disaggregated broadband network gateway case. So we've got two proposed work items on that. One is looking specifically at how it would be applied and what architecture we would need to apply it to the disaggregated broadband network gateway case. And the other one is looking at it from the point of view of the applications. Network address translation sometimes causes issues with applications. Sometimes things like voice over IP don't play well with it. So what we're looking at is a possible work item to kind of look into some of these applications, and this is more from a deployment point of view. Look into these applications and kind of track or look at which ones are having issues with the network address translation. And so then from that, we could maybe follow on with other work as to what to do about it.
Right.
So we're still evaluating that and how, like, scoping it and figuring out, like, exactly where we want to be working.
Okay.
Other things, I'm just running down my list. Hybrid access. We've done some work on hybrid access with TR, I think it's TR 348, TR 378. So that nailed down the technology and the architecture behind hybrid access. But we've got a paper coming out again, and hopefully in time for Broadband World Forum, that highlights exactly how hybrid access can be used. I mean, those TRs were done about a year ago, maybe not even. but this paper highlights how the hybrid access can apply to new higher speed networks. And in fact highlights how much more value you get out of using hybrid access for
Lots
these
of
higher speed
opportunity
networks.
for carriers.
Right,
leveraging that.
right. Especially in conjunction with fiber FTTP. So we should be looking for that. And then we get into the whole testing effort that's been going on in the work area. And that basically, we formed a new project stream. It's called Performance Experience Application Testing, or PEAT.
PEAT. All right.
You
get into the history of that
we
one?
will not get into the history of that, but it has a lot to do with Scotland.
Enough said.
Enough said. Anyway, that basically has three current activities going on, and a proposed new one. And this is one of the areas where we have some pretty exciting things going on. So we've got our application testing, which is basically looking at testing the network from the point of view of running an application. So as opposed to doing just, are you getting the speed you signed up for? No, it's looking at how would a gaming application run over this service? How would a gaming application run over this infrastructure? And actually taking into account some of the testing that's necessary for that.
Running right in parallel.
Not some of it's looking at the testing that's necessary for that, but looking at like voice over IP, gaming, peer-to-peer applications.
An essential companion then to the Broadband QED initiative as well, right?
Which is the next one. Basically looking at taking the measurement. Let me get into one other one first. There's a IP measurement from the edge to the customer premise that actually is looking at measuring the IP performance. So the bandwidth, the delay, the jitter. And we've done that before. That was TR390. In TR390 relied on something called two-way active measurement protocol, TWAMP. We've got a new version of that coming up that uses another protocol called STAMP. And STAMP is actually a lighter weight version of, not a lighter weight version, but it's a lighter weight measurement protocol that's easy, my understanding is easier to implement. And so how to do that measurement using STAMP. Session I just came out of is working on that. Then what QED does is it takes the measurement and is looking at the analysis of that measurement to predict experience. So, I've got my capacity, I've got my delay, I've got my jitter. Well, that's wonderful. So what does it look like when you're actually on the computer, or on your gaming console, right? Whatever app you're running. This is what it's looking at is how to predict the quality of experience from the data that you're collecting from your network.
And exciting news, we actually had a tremendous demonstration of the concept of Broadband QED here at the meeting this week, right?
Yeah, during the breaks.
Outsys came in and did the world's first real example of how that actually would work from a proof of concept standpoint.
Yes, it was. That was excellent. And then the new thing that actually it hasn't even come up on the agenda yet. It'll come up right after lunch. Is there's a proposed work item on IP capacity measurement and methodology. So right now, folks are using things like Ookla speed test and speed tests that use and rely on a protocol called TCP. TCP has an algorithm to it, which is a slow ramp up and an exponential back off when it sees anything like loss or delay. This has issues when you're measuring high-speed connections, and I don't remember the exact threshold, but once you get to a certain point on a high-speed connection, the ramp up and back off actually start to limit what you can measure, and therefore can't really measure the entire capacity of the connection. This proposed new work would be done in cooperation with ITUT Study Group 12 and ETSI STQ and IETF IPPM. I know that's a lot of acronyms, and I'm not even going to try and spell them all out.
Thank you.
But the idea here, though, is that the community is coming together to come up with one harmonized way of doing IP capacity measurement and methodology. so that we're all looking at the same things at the same time.
There's a lot of confusion there, so it's great work.
Yes, yes, and I'm
Chomping
looking
the bit
forward
for
to
it.
that. We still have to talk about exactly what the scope of the project is and what it'll cover, to what extent, and then, each one of these organizations has an
Right.
important role to play here, so we'll have to coordinate that. But I'm actually pretty excited about this work because it's one of the few times the industry has come together as a whole, and this is all being led by a gentleman from AT&T. Al Morton. So he's got a fairly influential gentleman in a number of these organizations who's leading this.
Yeah, it's so important because the good work and progress that the industry's been making is masked by these very same methods that are
Exactly.
utilized to measure it. Right. So
Right, yes,
It's just a
yes.
it's an unvirtuous circle. I don't know what you could.
Right. Yeah. Well.
Anyway,
but
we're going to
yeah,
fix it. We're gonna fix it.
yes,
That's great.
exactly. And a lot of what's been done so far on this is coming out of a workshop out of MIT. So it's got some good minds behind it.
Good.
Looking forward to
All right.
it.
Well, great. Well, you haven't been busy
And I'm
at
done
all.
with my list.
Yeah. You haven't been busy at all, have you?
No, not at all. No, I'm going to go have a cup of tea or something.
Well, I must say we're thankful for two things. One, that we were able to catch you in the middle of all this to give us an update. And I did want to congratulate you and the team for all the hard work you've been doing across all these different areas, because they've obviously been. You're one of the areas where the output of what you do is directly seen by the industry as adding value immediately, right? So, things I think like the speed tester are great examples of that, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
gonna have a
they
really
do
big
have direct
right
impact.
out of the gate. So again, thanks Dave for the update and good work in soldiering through the whole thing. And with that, let me just sign off. So this is Dave and Jeff signing off from Milan.
Thanks, Jeff.